Hi and welcome to the Cellar Door. My name is Lauren Lee Innis-Youren and I am so excited to share with you today one of my personal favourite wineries here in the Heathcote region. I'm going to share with you the stories of the people who live here and work here, as well as some delicious wines. So please join me as we check out Wild Duck Creek Estate. So I know you as Duck. I've always known you as Duck, but you are David Anderson and you are the founder of Wild Duck Creek Estate. So tell me a little bit about the beautiful place we're in.
Well, you're in the vineyard where the winery is, which is over here. This isn't the first vineyard I've ever planted, but along here is the Wild Duck Creek behind us. And it wasn't named after me, the winery, even though I've been called Duck all my life. It was named basically because of its proximity. And most of our major vineyards are actually on the watershed of the Wild Duck Creek. Having said that, this vineyard was planted in two parts. This half was planted by Liam and the other half was planted by me. In 1988 I planted that and this in 2000, Liam. And at the time I'd planted a handful of other vineyards, but I had no idea of what a good site and a bad site is. This is absolutely gorgeous site.
Okay.
This has an easterly facing aspect and it's low down, it has minimal wind and it has minimal moisture because we hardly ever give it any water. It's watered from a dam source only, which has been dried up for years anyway. So consequently you're seeing vines that are just been picked last week but still have a lot of leaf on them. In other words, these aren't under stress, these vines.
That's good. It's looking like it's very healthy. So.
Well, it kind of didn't start just here because my earliest vineyard is about 1 kilometre away. It was named after my father, but my father-in-law owned this block.
Okay.
Right? And he lived over there. My father and mother-in-law lived over there. And they weren't too keen on me planting a vineyard on a block I didn't own. But one weekend they went away and I planted the second half of this in 2 days. And they came back a little shocked with a fence wrapped around 2,600 vines.
Whoops.
Yeah. It was a bit of fun, but that part of that vineyard is what's produced probably our most famous wine, Duck Muck. But
Yes.
we didn't know that for 25 years. It took a long time to work out what was really happening on this site. And I think most sites are the same.
So what got you into the artistry of winemaking?
Well, my family are full of engineers and I was kind of the artist. But I think like a lot of artists, they enjoy a glass of wine. But I kind of noticed that when I was 14. And by the time I was 15 and 16, I'd stopped stealing my father's wine out of his flagons. With a group of friends, I was buying 200-litre drums of wine from South Australia and bottling them, and that's our interest. And we were starting little cellars then. But more importantly, I just wanted to be a farmer. I just wanted to leave something on this planet that I hadn't, that was sort of my heart and soul, and not just take from it. So we're reforesting at the same time we're growing grapes now. But I started then just to be a farmer, and I thought, well, wine is one of those things that is a beautiful thing to be involved with. It's flipping hard work. There's people who, like your father, buy a vineyard and try to resurrect it, work out.
Yes.
And I planted probably 30 vineyards in my life for other people, but as a business as well. But I just wanted to be outdoors and farming, and it took me 20 years as an untrained winemaker to work out what you have to do to this organism to produce this. Now, I've been very lucky that I've got a son, Liam, who's come out of the woodwork as a person with great passion. He said to me, "Dad, can I come and help you in this winery?" And I said, well, you know, someone's going to have to know something around here. It'd be good if you had a winemaking degree. And he went away and did that instantly. And so I've had a really wonderful time in watching him develop and take over where I couldn't have gone. And he's taking it another step, which is just seriously wonderful to watch. So I'm relegated to fixing bins, I think, and
I'm sure you do more than
drinking wine
that.
that he's making now. But we do confer about the wines we make now, and the experience goes back a long way and can't just be earned after a few years. It takes a lot out of you to remember things that went on and how you can develop your product from this year after year after year. It's been a wonderful sort of a journey.
Well, it's great that it's now a family business as well.
Now I've got your dad in it.
And my dad's involved as well, absolutely, and he loves it. So I would love to meet some more of the people around here. I think Liam would probably be one of the best people to talk to get some passion there. So let's go see him.
Please, thank you.
Liam, you are probably the busiest man here at the winery and the estate here. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I do pretty much a bit of everything really. I manage the place now, so I'm in control of all the winemaking, although we've got a pretty good team there, so I can sort of leave them to do their stuff, but it is a real team effort here. I manage all of our winemaking from vineyards right the way through till the end product comes out, packaging, the whole lot, and then manage everyone beyond that. So all of our markets, domestic, international, all of that, just to try and sort of keep things flowing and seamless. But I do pretty much everything, you know, up at 5:30 in the morning, bring the kids out here. During vintage, it's a team effort, including the kids.
Yeah, I think I saw some on Instagram.
Yeah, that's right.
Pressing the
grapes, that was at
yep.
5:30 in the morning, the poor buggers. I've got to get them up, and they love it though. They've got to an age now where they can really get involved, and they'll help me clean, they'll help me do plunging, they'll help pump overs, they'll do all sorts of stuff, which is great.
Wonderful.
So it's a real family effort here, and I include all of our staff as part of our family, and really extends to our customers too. It's all a big family effort. We make wines for our customers. We don't make wines for us or for our critics. We make wine because we know our customers enjoy it. We love drinking our own wines, which makes a big difference, but really it's all about that extended family.
Speaking of family, you are David's son.
Yep.
So how did you get involved with all of this? Did you just put your hand up one day and say, I want to do this?
Yeah, sort of. It kind of happened that way. I've been involved here. I mean, obviously Dad's been here been in vineyards for 35, 40 years, and when I was a tiny little tacker, I still remember crawling around our oldest Cabernet vineyard when I was 4 or 5 years old and picking grapes, and every autumn we'd have to come out and pick grapes, and initially I hated it, as every kid does, but you sort of grow to really enjoy and appreciate what it is, and I've been very lucky with the upbringing that I've had, and Mum and Dad were really generous with me and let me do my own thing, and I wasn't forced to come here, which was great. I sort of worked it out for myself, and got to about the age of 20 and realised that it was either professional golf or winemaking, and didn't really like living out of a suitcase too much. And I've always had a passion for wine, and I think Dad has instilled that in me from a very young age.
Most likely, yeah.
But it was just really nice to be accepted here and not have to be, I wasn't dragged here, I wasn't forced to work to do what my parents wanted me to do. It was all on my own volition, and it was really a lovely thing to be able to just sort of come in. And then I was about 22 and Dad suggested that I go and do a winemaking degree, and of course he's completely untrained. Of course. And when I was back then, I thought, well, if you're untrained, why the hell do I need to do a winemaking degree? And we sort of came up with the idea that I really needed to, or someone needed to have some sort of formal training, just in case something went wrong, more so than if everything was going right. Yes. It was just to sort of keep us on the straight and narrow, I suppose, and keep us up to date.
Well, it's paid off.
Well, thank God he did.
Yeah. Beautiful wine.
Yeah, thank you.
Brian, you've worked here for about 5 years now, and you've been a visitor even longer before that. Yep. And before that, you were a sommelier. How did that connect with what you do here today?
Early days, it was something when I was getting into wine that I was able to buy Wild Duck Creek wines. And then over time, as I learned to love them, it was a place that I wanted to search out and come to work. Becoming a sommelier though, that was something else that happened along the journey. I didn't want to continue working as a waiter. I was in love with wine. And being a sommelier meant that I got to do something different. I got to connect with the people, got to connect with the land, and that's really why I ended up wanting to come and work for a winery direct, because it meant that I could actually start creating the things that I was selling every day, if that made any sense.
Excellent. So what does a sommelier do?
A sommelier is in charge of a beverage program, It's not just about serving customers, which I think a lot of people think it is. It's also, I think, we're also something that people shouldn't be too scared of. But it's about procuring wine, dealing with wine reps, and things that all go into food and wine matching. So the best things that I think I've ever been involved with, the ones that were probably the easiest as well. There was a time where I wrote a wine list for a Tasmanian or a Southern Australian style restaurant who sourced everything, Tasmania, Bass Strait, those types of places. And so when I was buying wine, I was able to look for wine from those particular places to really match with the food. And I think when you're matching food with wine and food together from where it's locally sourced or made or it comes from, I think that's something that's really unique and really good.
Excellent. Well, you definitely sound like you know what you're talking about, which is excellent because you host a lot of the wine tastings here, is that right?
Yeah, that's true. So whenever someone can make an appointment to visit here, we only have one official open weekend a year where people who are on our list or our location holders can actually come and taste all of the wines. It's also, the reason that is it's the only time of the year that we actually have all of our wines open for tasting.
Right.
So the rest of the year, it's a unique experience depending on A, how much wine I have, B, who actually walks through the door. They have to have an appointment first, but when they actually come, they're going to get the experience that's something they can't get everywhere else.
Well, there's no secrets here. So we try and keep everything open, and we show them everything. We show them our winemaking process. We bring them up here to the barrel shed. Quite often we might taste some barrels, although we don't do that as much as we possibly could. We certainly involve them in everything that we do, right the way from just tasting wine, which some people just want to taste wine and then disappear, and that's fine, to the full experience where we go for a walk in the vineyard. We come up here, we'll spend some time down there tasting wine, and we'll just give them a sense of what this winery and our family and our extended family is all about.
It's very inclusive.
Yeah, and so that's partly why we don't have a cellar door that's open 24/7. We have an appointment system where people can make an appointment, but we generally want to spend 2 or 3 hours with them. So if they make an appointment, we'll just block out the period after that so that we can actually give them a genuine experience instead of having people wandering in the door constantly and not being able to spend some quality time with them.
Absolutely.
That's really important for us. It's part of our whole makeup, is to give people the full experience so they can walk away and really understand what we're all about.
Gives them something to talk about at the dinner
Absolutely.
table.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very exciting. Well, Duck Muck is a name of a wine that I've heard a lot growing up in my household. So tell me a little bit about it. What's making it so special for you?
The Spring Flat is the probably most important wine of our whole winery. But the Duck Muck sprung out in 1994. We had what was a really big vintage for us, and it was about 20 tonnes. But we'd filled everything we could fill to ferment, and I had to stop the picking because we had nowhere to put the fruit. And that last bit of fruit, a friend of mine who's a lecturer at Newcastle University, had been doing our books. He is a lecturer in finance. He said, "What are you going to do with that fruit?" And I said, "Well, I think we'll just pick it and put it in the Spring Flat." And he said, no, I'll provide a barrel. We'll share the fruit in the end and we'll share the wine. I said, all right then, fair enough. And it was picked 2 weeks after our Spring Flat. And I didn't think the fruit would be any good at all. In actual fact, the only thing I had to top that barrel up, because it wasn't quite enough, was a little bit of pressings from our oldest Cabernet vineyard, which proved to be a sort of like the catalyst for a really good wine. And by the time we'd worked this out, though, we'd given away the first wine.
Okay.
Given away to people like your father, who kept asking me for more.
Yeah.
Right. And the third one, we were lucky enough to get a pretty steamy award in America.
Wow.
So it sort of set that on a course which we weren't even expecting.
Excellent. It's a very good wine. I'm sure that everyone would love to give it a taste.
Yeah, well, if there was any left, I'd give you one. We've only been able to make it every second or third year. And part of it is this side here gets frosted because it's low down, and part of its beauty is it gets frosted. And after a frost, as most people will tell you if they grow grapes, they'll shoot again, but they shoot with less fruit. So the ratio of fruit and leaf changes quite a bit. That makes it easier for the vine to ripen that fruit though that's left. So it teaches you a lot about what viticulture is. So that the ripening, easy ripening fruit had some beautiful acidity, natural acidity, and much more than we experienced in other vineyards. So that particular wine, if you want to make it, doesn't happen every year. It's kind of when not necessarily a frost, but when the ratio changes, we experience some really very different, robust fruit with high acidity, which is the key to it.
So tell us a little bit about what your favourite aspects of the winery and the wine that you create here.
Well, we're really holistic in our view of winemaking, and it's sort of an extension of the vineyard, and how we look after our vineyards is really how we make our wine. So we micromanage, I suppose, our vineyards, and we're really passionate about what we do out there. And it's the same with what we do in here. And we do a lot of experimentation. We do a lot of small batch winemaking. The barrels you'll see in here, a lot of them are just tiny batches, 1, 2, 3 barrels of one batch of wine. So within that, we can do a lot of sort of learning, I suppose, on the job. And I don't think we're ever, as winemakers, we're never perfect, and we don't really know how vintages are going to turn out. You're making assumptions a lot of the time, and a lot of it's gut instinct. Like we're picking our vineyard here on Friday. We're going to get some rain on the weekend, and my gut instinct is it's probably not going to survive the rain. So we probably could have hung it out there for another week, but in reality, the wine's going to be great as it is. So we thought we'd just pick it. A lot of winemaking, great winemaking, from what Dad's taught me, sort of by diffusion almost, because he's a bit of an artist. He's not a trained winemaker, he's not a scientist. He instilled in me the idea that wine is an art form. When I was growing up, I was able to look at what Dad was doing, and sort of I didn't realise it at the time. I was only young, and right the way through my teenage years, you sort of absorb things without realising it. And I could just see in Dad what he thought winemaking was, and it was really about knowing your vineyards, picking things at the right time, looking after your vines, not asking too much of them, and dreaming of what the wine's going to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the track. Because we come from a basis of making wine to drink, and we enjoy drinking wine, and you don't want to cut too many corners, you don't want to make too many shortcuts, you just don't want to be taking things for granted. You want to be on the ball all the time, and so and which is what he was, and I sort of absorbed that. And learning a lot of stuff at university, you don't get taught that. There's nothing like that you get taught when you come out with a degree. It's all passion, it's all desire to make something that's great. And in the end, if you don't do that, then you're making mistakes all the time. You're not making wine for the right reasons.
Sounds like a very creative process.
Absolutely. Yeah, no
Wonderful.
doubt about that.
This bottle
Let's have a look.
is the early spring flat, right? It's an early label, and but the painting on this bottle was painted by a lady in Melbourne called Leslie Sinclair, who was one of the original founders at Montsalvat in Eltham, and she taught me to paint. But she painted this when she was 79 years old, and it illustrates what this terrain around here looks like in Heathcote when it's ripening. And it was a 40-degree day, and I brought her up from Melbourne in a little 69 Beetle, and she drank several pots of beer at the pub afterwards. But the most important thing is she was a very famous winemaker that only had half of one eye operating. She did 2 paintings that day in 40 degrees as a nearly 80-year-old woman with half an eye. But it's a beautiful little painting which just illustrates exactly what this country is doing when it's ripening grapes. But I had no idea at the time. It was just one of those beautiful flukes.
It's a perfect representation of what we're looking at. It's
It is.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What is it about the Wild Duck Creek wine and the Heathcote region in general that makes it just so special?
We particularly at Wild Duck Creek have a really sort of, I think, a niche style, something that definitely when I was working in restaurants, it was something that I used to call a banker. It was something I could put in a glass and it would make people happy. But I think that's general of the Heathcote region. There's a number of great producers here. When you visit us, if you go to visit someone else, you generally get the winemaker, or you get the people who are family or behind the wine, or someone very close, or someone who's really involved. You don't just get another tasting bench, another generic spiel. We really want to know about you and what you do. And I think that's something that's quite unique about the region as well. apart from having really deep flavours, you know, we should probably try some.
We definitely should. Absolutely. So what are we looking at here? What have we got?
I should probably say that on the label that we're looking at here, it's actually a painting that's behind us as well, is the original.
Oh, excellent. That's the one that Duck was talking about earlier. I said, yeah, that's the one there.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That was a painting done by his original art teacher.
Yes.
That was looking out over this vineyard here. So what we're going to try are the first 2 vineyards that were ever planted at Wild Duck Creek. They're also the first 2 wines, therefore, that were ever made and ever released in the first year. This one here, the Allen's Cabernet, was planted in 1974, and the Spring Flat Vineyard, which is the road we're on here and the property, and we've got a vineyard just only a few hundred metres from where we are now, that was their first ever Shiraz. So they were both released in the first year, so we should probably try one of those now.
Yeah, absolutely. Which one are we going to go for first?
I think we'll try the Spring Flat
Yeah,
first.
okay, go the Shiraz, lovely. So what can we expect with the Shiraz?
You'll always have really, really dark, deep, rich colour coming out of our wines. A little bit too, probably.
Absolutely.
And you'll get a lot of black fruits, a little bit of bramble, but what's really important about our wines, cheers.
Cheers.
You get that there, that big, rich black fruits. But I think it's the texture, and I think it's the purity of the wine the whole way through. And when you put it on your palate, I think you get lovely silky tannins and a really long finish.
Lovely. That's very, silky. I
It's
like
almost
that
velvety.
word.
And lovely and rich.
Very nice. Quite like that.
You like that a lot?
Yes.
What I should also say that with the Spring Flat Shiraz, these days, although Cabernet was the first vineyard that was planted, the Spring Flat Shiraz is the flagship wine here at Wild Duck Creek. It's the one that most people have seen. Helps that it's been made every single year.
Yes.
A lot of the other wines aren't made every year, but it's the most important wine that we could make every year. We have other wines that are higher in price, and generally people seem to think that therefore makes them your flagship or your hallmark wine, but that's not the case with us. This is the wine that I think for us, if we were to not release this, then we would have had an absolute disaster vintage.
Wow, okay, there you go. So what are we looking at for the Cabernet here?
The Cabernet is going to give you a whole range of different characters. As you can see, already very different in colour.
Very different.
And unlike the Spring Flat Shiraz that had black fruits, you're looking for a lot more red fruits in this.
Okay.
And then you'll get sort of bits of violet, little bits of mint. Unlike the Spring Flat, which is 100% Shiraz, the Cabernet is a blend of 5 different grape varieties. So it's Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Malbec and Petit Verdot.
Right. It smells very different.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very, very different. A little bit more earthy. You get those red fruits instead of black fruits. Then you're also seeing that violets, and with age things will change quite heavily with this as well.
Oh.
Definitely one of the wines from us that's for the cellar.
Definitely red fruits. I can taste that difference there. That's
Yeah, whereas Shiraz tends to give a lot more quite early, and it's hard not to love. I think Cabernet sometimes needs a little bit of time just to show where it best performs.
What have been some points that you've reached where you've known that this was the turning point for your estate, for the success that you're going to create in your wine?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us, and we've a lot of wineries will aspire to ratings and what have you, and we've certainly had a couple of great ratings over the period of time, over the last 20 years, but it's certainly not the biggest thing that we make wine for. It's more about making wine for our customers, and we get a lot of satisfaction and we get a lot of indications from our customers that we're doing the right thing by our wines just selling out. We're constantly evolving and we're constantly moving forward, but our customers give us the feedback that we need. You know, we listen to what they're saying about our wines, how they're enjoying it, how they're drinking it, what they're doing with it. All of that takes a huge impact on what we do here, right the way through from growing, through all of our staff, to the end process here of barreling wines, bottling, packaging, delivering a product that people can be proud of and that not everyone can get either. So it's kind of nice to be in a position where you're making wines that do sell out and that people can take a lot of pride in when they go and they take it to someone's house and they have it for dinner, or they have it with dinner, and they can talk about it with their friends, you know. And this winery has been built on word of mouth, essentially. Dad, in the early years, did a lot of dinners at houses, including your parents.
I remember, yes,
Yep.
absolutely
so
remember.
Growing up, you probably experienced similar things to me, in that you'd have a lot of people around the table and you'd be talking, and it wouldn't necessarily be just about the wine, it'd be about the experience that people have, not only when they come here, but when they consume our wine, you know, because if they're not enjoying it, then what the hell are we doing?
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, it's very unique. It's a beautiful way of looking at a very artistic and creative process.
Yeah, and I think we need to be always vigilant about what our customers need, and trying to be the best that we can possibly be without trying to please other people, because in the end, others don't matter. It's just our customers and us. And our customers, if they talk about our wines in favourable ways, then really we've got no issues at all, ever. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, it's great. It creates a really great experience for them, especially if they do come here to see the wine in its natural environment being made, and to interact with your staff, who all seem extraordinarily happy to be here. Is that a common trend that you find?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't spend much time in other wineries, but we treat our staff like they're our family. You know, and we've got a guy here who's been Paul, we call him the gnome. He's got a really long beard, and you know, he's been with us. He was our first employee besides me. And it took Mum and Dad the courage of about 5 years of battling away, extending my capabilities beyond what they were, to the point where they realised that we needed to employ one other person. Back then we were about a quarter of the size of what we are now. But he's been with us ever since, and he's never thought about leaving. He's been in several jobs previously, in the Navy, he's done all sorts of stuff. And we treat our staff like they're just one of us, you know, and I think that reaps its rewards in this business, because they are passionate about what they do. We give them the freedom to do what they need to do. We give them their own responsibilities, but they know that we're going to look after them.
I've had a great time here at Wild Duck Creek. I've had some delicious wines and got to know the stories behind the people here at this passionate and family-run estate. But stay tuned with us. We're heading down to Curly Flat in Lancefield next. I'll see you there. Jeni, you are the owner here at Curly Flat. Tell us a little bit about the place. What does it mean to you to be at Curly Flat Winery?
The Curly Flat farm here at Lancefield in the Macedon Ranges was purchased in 1989 by Philip Morrigan. It was identified as an ideal place to grow the early ripening varieties of Pinot and Chardonnay. All that was on the property at acquisition was an abandoned homestead, in which we sit, not abandoned anymore.
No.
And about 12 trees.
Wow.
We added a lake, first of all. Then we added the vines. We planted those between 1992 and 2000. 98 was our first vintage. Lucky for us, 98 was a fabulous vintage all around Victoria. In 2002, my carpenter brother Robbo and his friend and master bricklayer Kirby built the winery.
Wow, well, you've really built it from the ground up. That's excellent.
We built it from scratch.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
I'm very, very proud of it.
As you should be, that's excellent. Tell us about your team. You have a great bunch of people out there doing some good work.
We do. The team is one of the key factors of Curly Flat. A lot of people ask me, who's your winemaker? Winemaker's really important, but I think the team is absolutely critical to the success of Curly Flat. A lot of the staff have been here for 12 years or more. They have this wonderful ownership attitude you could not buy. They've got a vast array of skills, which when you meld them together, it's magic.
So tell us what's happening now at Cellar Door. Something new and exciting is around the corner, I'm sure.
Curly Flat's in phase 2. In 2017, I accepted an offer to be the sole owner of Curly Flat. Very exciting.
Very.
I wanted to secure both the financial future and the philosophical future of Curly Flat. I resisted offers to sell Curly Flat because I wanted to preserve the culture of Curly Flat. My family and friends were wonderful. They stumped up a lot of the money that I needed. I wanted the soul of the vineyard and the winery to be maintained and protected from commercialisation and returns-driven production.
So that's your thing?
That's right.
But you're protecting the heart and soul, and that's wonderful.
That's right. I want to leave a tangible legacy long after I'm gone.
So what did you find you needed to make this come to fruition, to happen for you?
Curly Flat needed a fabulous winemaker to take us to the next stage. I also wanted a fine human being to work with, and I was delighted when Matt Harrop came on board. Matt knows wine. He's chairman of judges at the Royal Melbourne Wine Awards in 2018, 19 and 20. Matt has an outstanding palate, which makes him a stellar winemaker, and the team are just thrilled to have him on board.
He sounds like a wonderful person to have in the team, and I can't wait to meet him. Well, Matt, you are the winemaker here at Curly Flat. What was it that sparked your interest in wine and brought you here?
Well, it was a long time ago. I grew up in New Zealand in a family of non-wine drinkers, and I copped a job when I was 18 at a place called Novelos, which is in West Auckland. So the New Zealand wine industry is pretty young in 1988. And I started a job as a cellar hand there for a couple of years, and that sort of piqued my interest. Went to Roseworthy College in South Australia. Travelled around the place, ended up in Melbourne in the late 90s, and spent 19 years at Shadowfax making the wine there, and then started here 18 months ago.
Oh wow, so you're very new.
I'm the newest member of the team here at Curly Flat, and the most insignificant member of the team too.
Oh, I'm sure that's not true. So the wine here at Curly Flat, very good wine, very special.
Yeah.
What do you think makes it so special?
I think that probably the defining aspect of Curly Flat is our site, where we are. You know, we're high in the Macedon Ranges. We're at 550 metres up in the sky. That lends itself to creating or growing really, really great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But without if you can have a great site, but without really, really good people farming that site really well, your wine's not going to come to much. So for me, Curly Flat is about this place. It's about the soil. We farm the soil, we grow the grapes, we make the wine, we sell the wine. We're a self-contained little unit. Everything we make is grown here on site. We've got a dedicated team of people who do their job and do it really, really well. You got to think about the Macedon Ranges. We're the coldest mainland growing region in Australia, so there's cooler regions to grow grapes in Tasmania, the Huon Valley, the Coal River Valley. And what that means is that grapes ripen really, really slowly here. So because of our altitude, we get cold nights, warmish days, but every night, during the growing season, it cools down. To grow absolutely cool climate grapes in Australia, you've either got to go south, so Tasmania, or to New Zealand, Central Otago, or you've got to go up. So Macedon, although we're a big region geographically, we're quite a small region when it comes to the amount of grapes grown here.
You have a very unique space for your Cellar Door experience. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
The first time I came to the Macedon Ranges, I went to the Cellar Door of Flynn and Williams. It was Laurie and Nola Williams. It was in their home. We sat in front of the fire. We took our time to talk about the wines, taste the wines, and talk about the Flynn and Williams experience. Yeah, that feel for me at Cellar Door that the Williams captured is more important than a Vogue-worthy special interior design.
Absolutely.
And I hope we have captured that feel.
I would say that you have succeeded there. It is so comfortable and cozy in your Cellar Door, and I cannot wait to get in there to do a wine tasting. I think that would be delightful. Brando, you've been here on and off for about 18 years. What sort of jobs have you done around Curly Flat since you've been here?
All sorts of jobs here at Curly Flat. So I started working in the office when I first started here in 2001, but also worked in the winery for harvest. I've spent time in the vineyard pruning and picking. I work in the warehouse, I work here in Cellar Door. Preferably not in the office too much anymore, but yeah, all sorts of jobs here ever since I've been here.
Bit of a jack of all trades, you would say?
Probably the best way, jack of some trades anyway.
Wonderful. So what have you got to share with us today?
I thought we'd just start off, we've got our two wines, our main wines to show. So I'll start off with some of the 2016 Curly Flat Chardonnay.
So what would I be looking at here? What sort of
So a really
wine?
lovely traditional barrel fermented and aged Chardonnay. Lovely natural acidity, which is what we really aim for here in the Macedon ranges. Cool climate wine growing, so really nice, bright, fresh natural acidity, but lovely, ripe, juicy fruit from a warm, early harvested year in 2016.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Very happy
nice.
with our Chardonnays, yeah.
Yes, lovely. And so was that one of your most popular, would you say, the Chardonnay?
Probably our most popular. We're best known for our Pinot Noirs, but we've always had a really good following with our Chardonnays as well. We also do a little bit of Pinot Gris. We sometimes make a rosé or a white Pinot from our Pinot Noir, and we do a little bit of sparkling as well in some years, but mainly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
So this is another important member of the team here at Curly Flat. This is Chewy. And tell us a little bit about Chewy.
Chewy's a Cellar Door star. He's dropped back a little because he's nearly 17, but in his younger days he loved to schmooze with the Cellar Door customers. And he had some endearing habits, like he'd drink from your water glass. So we had to try and stop him from doing that. But Chewy's a famous cat. He graces the cover of Wine Cats, and he's famous all around the world. A lot of people, as soon as they come to Cellar Door, they say, "And where's Chewy?"
Oh, and he is just a gentleman. He's beautiful. So you've had a lot of success here at Curly Flat. What are the other key points that you would say are your biggest successes here?
Yeah, one of the other critical success factors is our no compromise attitude. We spent whatever we thought we needed to spend in the vineyard and the winery to produce the best grapes and the best wine. We have a great attention to detail in every aspect of the business, in the vineyard, the winery, and in the business itself. We hold the wine in bottle for about a year after bottling. So it means that by the time it's released on the market, the Pinot in particular is almost 3 years old. How many times do you go into a restaurant and you think this wine, a particular wine would be fabulous if it had just had more time in bottle? Curly Flat doesn't suffer that fate.
So what would you say is the most well-known wine from Curly Flat?
Without a doubt, our Pinot Noir. So since 1998, Curly Flat's made Pinot. It's 75% of our plantings here in the vineyard, and so it gets 75% of our effort. 20% is Chardonnay and 5% is Pinot Gris. So since 1998, the wines have had critical acclaim both here and abroad. Many people regard Curly Flat as one of the great, if not the greatest Pinot Noir producer in Australia. The wines have an amazing legacy for age, so if they're cellared properly, they age beautifully. So Pinot is what we're known for because Pinot is very specific to where it grows. So as I was saying earlier, we're a cold place here. You can't grow Pinot in Heathcote, you can't grow it on Margaret River, you can't grow it in the Barossa, because Pinot is very specific where it grows. It needs a climate where it can ripen very, very slowly, and luckily here we're a very cool site. That being said about our Pinot, our Chardonnays have had really good acclaim as well. So our Chardonnays are rich, full-flavoured, powerful wines. The little bit of Pinot Gris we make every year is a really interesting wine. We won't increase the plantings of Pinot Gris, maybe with Chardonnay down the track, but we're definitely increasing the plantings of Pinot Noir. We're planting more Pinot this year, later on in spring of 19, yeah.
Excellent. And what are we drinking at the moment?
This is our 2017, so you're getting a sneak preview of a wine that won't be released until August this year. So
very lucky.
17 was a cool vintage for us in the Macedon ranges, quite a late harvest and cool, so a very floral vintage. And I think you can smell that. It's got those red fruit spice, cardamom spice, those sorts of aromatics. And typical sort of muscular Curly Flat palate. One of the nice things about Pinot is that it really reflects where it's grown. And Curly Flat is quite a muscular site. There's other people making great Pinot in Macedon, but they look very, very different to this. They can be lighter and more fragrant. If they're a little bit further north and a bit warmer, they can be a bit denser. 17 for us was a cool vintage, lovely aging potential, and sandwiched between two quite warm vintages, 16 quite warm and early, 18 a little warm as well. So we get this really lovely vintage variation here in Macedon, which it happens across Australia, but in the warmer parts of Australia, basically every vintage is warm.
Yes.
It's just a degree of warmth, and so the wines really express that as well. So it's our job here in the winery, or the vineyard initially, but definitely here in the winery, to think about the vintage, think about what we're doing in the winery to best sort of amplify what the vintage is giving us, and therefore we'll see with a really clear lens what the site's given us as well.
So I'll show you the 2016 Curly Flat Pinot as well. This is our current release. A little darker, a little more concentrated than a lot of other Pinots we've made in the past. It was a smaller harvest, smaller bunches, smaller berries, so you generally get darker colour, a little more tannic, a little more concentrated. Give it a little swirl, because it does take a little bit of time to open up.
Okay.
The Pinots, they really like a little bit of air to open up. Probably give it another half an hour or so open, and it'll really open up. You'll start releasing the aromatics, soften the tannins a little bit, and a really, really lovely wine when it's had a little bit of time to open up.
It's quite nice already as it is as
Absolutely,
well.
absolutely. It's great straight up. It's partly because we like to keep our wines in bottle for a little bit longer before we release them. So it gives them that time to age a little more and makes them ready to drink when they're first sold, but they do age very well. So if you're looking for wines to cellar for 10 or 15 years, potentially 20 with some of our vintages, I think our Pinots are really good for that, and the 16 would be a really good candidate for a long cellaring.
What we do at Cellar Door also is we always have the current wine, but some older vintages available as well. Once again, we want to show people how well Curly Flat wines do age. Jeni's kept back a significant amount of wine every year to release as museum stock. So there's always 2 vintages of Pinot open at Cellar Door, 2 vintages of Chardonnay, and generally speaking there will be something older as well. So if you do have a significant birthday or someone you need a bottle from 2008, you have to ask really nicely, but if we've got it there, we will be able to sell it to you, because one of the things we do want to do on show, as I keep saying, show people how well our wines age, if they're cellared correctly, and so more and more people are buying our wines, putting them down and enjoying them at 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years of age.
Oh, that's lovely. Keeps people coming back as well, I'd say.
Yeah. The exciting thing about wine is every year is different, so the 18 is different to the 17, which is different to the 16. And it's a really obvious thing, but I keep saying to the crew here, we know what we're going to be doing next March or next April. We know we're going to be picking grapes, so farming is a cyclical thing, every season's different, but the reward is, coming over there, sitting down and trying the fruits of our labour.
But I have one more question for you. Curly Flat, the name, where did that come from? It's really interesting.
We get asked that frequently, as you would imagine. I've been a fan of the iconic Australian cartoonist Michael Leunig since 1974. Fell in love with him. And if you have a look around Curly Flat, there are cartoons of his dotted everywhere. Michael Leunig has a cartoon about Curly Flat, and it says something like, "The locals never bother to explain the structure or complexity of their wines, but after they've had a few glasses, they become quite eloquent in describing how it makes them feel." We love that sentiment, and we wanted to produce a serious wine, but we didn't want to take ourselves too seriously. And hopefully we might introduce a few more fans to Michael Leunig.
So I can hear some bubbling going on in here. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is, where it's coming from?
Yeah, Lauren, we're in our barrel cellar. Obviously we're subterranean, we're half underground, but that noise you can hear is our 2019s fermenting in barrel. So we make a little bit of white Pinot over here, which is a rosé style. We press our Pinot, run it into barrel for a natural fermentation, which is happening now. So there's an airlock on the top of the barrel, and as the yeast is converting the sugar to alcohol, it's also giving off carbon dioxide, and that bubbling you can hear is the CO2 coming out of the barrel. So when this room, there's only a couple of dozen barrels in there, but when this room's got a couple of 100 barrels in there doing it, it's pretty cool to come in here. All we're doing as winemakers is interrupting a natural process. The natural endpoint of fermentation is vinegar.
Right.
So if a bunch of grapes falls off a vine, falls on the ground, it'll ferment. The sugar will convert to alcohol. but eventually bacteria will convert that alcohol to vinegar. Vinegar is really, really stable, so wines are quite an unstable product. So we're just jumping in there at the wine stage, hopefully, if we do our job properly, to stop the wine from turning to vinegar. So that's the beginning of a very natural process you're hearing over there.
Wonderful. Oh, it is very relaxing, for sure.
Yeah, it is. It's even more relaxing when you drink it, actually. It's,
I can attest to that as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Curly Flat is the perfect place to visit for a day trip, being less than an hour from the Melbourne CBD and 35 minutes from the airport. They're open from noon till 5 p.m, Friday to Monday, and public holidays. But Cellar Door visitors are welcome every day. If you would like to visit on a weekday, phone ahead, as the Cellar Door staff will need to come in from the vineyard or winery to show you the wines. I had a wonderful time here today at Curly Flat with their enthusiastic staff, their gorgeous animals and their delicious wine. It really is a great place to visit and they have so much to offer. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out our other episodes of The Cellar Door online.